Where did the greatest sword in all of Arthurian legend actually come from? Was Excalibur the sword in the stone? Or was it something far more mysterious? Tonight, we return to Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Mallory to discover how King Arthur received the sword that would become the greatest symbol of Camelot. Welcome back to the Lore Fireplace, where we explore the ancient legends and forgotten stories that shaped the medieval imagination. Let's start the fire. Many people believe that the sword and the stone in Excalibur are the exact same sword, and that, at least according to Mallory, is far from the truth. Modern films often combine them into one legendary blade, and many people or many authors eventually or just blatantly call both of them Excalibur, but there's a very significant difference between both of these swords. The sword Arthur pulled from the stone proved he was the rightful king. It was a sign from God that no other man possessed the divine right to rule England. But that sword would not remain with him very long. After Arthur's greatest victory against the rebellious king, which we talked about in a previous video, new enemies would arise against the young king. During one of these conflicts, Arthur faced King Pellinore in single combat. Now, King Pellinore would eventually become one of Arthur's greatest allies, but during this fierce battle, they struck at each other's swords until the sword that Arthur had pulled from the stone eventually broke in two. The very weapon that won him the throne was destroyed. Arthur suddenly stood defenseless before one of the greatest kings in Britain. King Pellinore raised his weapon to try and kill him, but right before the fatal strike could be given, Merlin intervened. Using one of his many powerful enchantments, he caused Pellinore to fall into a deep, deep sleep. Arthur's life was saved, but now there's another problem. A king without a sword. Is that really a king? Merlin then quietly leads Arthur away from the bloody battlefield he and Pellinore had just created, and the two ride together for quite a long time until they reached a perfectly still, quiet, and beautiful lake. Almost unnatural, almost mystical, you could even say. As Arthur looked across the surface, he noticed something impossible. An arm rising from the center of the lake, and it held a magnificent sword. Its jeweled hilt glimmered in the light and was like any weapon Arthur had ever seen. Arthur, stunned and confused, turns to Merlin for guidance, asking, "What does this mean? What is this sword?" Merlin then promptly explains that that sword belongs to the mystical Lady of the Lake. Arthur then goes on to talk to the Lady of the Lake, asking her if she would be willing to give this sword to him. Notice a very important detail here. Arthur does not take the sword. He does not force himself onto it. He does not defeat a great guardian. He does not complete a magnificent trial. It is given to him as a gift. This, again, brings out one of Arthur's greatest qualities, especially early in the story, where Arthur shows that kingship often doesn't just mean that you take things by force. It means that you have wisdom, humility, and are open to receiving gifts and getting help from others, which is something that many knights and many kings in the future tend to forget. Soon after Arthur asks for this blade, a beautiful lady appears to come out of the water. She approaches Arthur and greets him with respect. Arthur asks if she would grant him the sword. The lady agrees, but under one faithful condition. She asks that Arthur give her one gift in return. Not a gift that he would provide today, not even a gift that he would provide tomorrow, but someday in the future, she would come to him for help and he would provide that gift in return. We read in Le Morte d'Arthur, "Sir Arthur, king," said the damsel, "that sword is mine, and if ye will give me a gift, when I ask it you, ye shall have it. By my faith," said Arthur, "I will give you what gift ye will ask." "Well," said the damsel, go ye into yonder barge, and row yourself to the sword, and take it, and the scabbard with you, and I will ask my gift when I see my time. Arthur then rows over, reaches for the sword, and takes it from the lady's hand. This sword is the legendary Excalibur, the sword whose name would become known throughout the world. The sword itself was only part of the gift. The biggest thing was the scabbard hanging at Arthur's side was even more precious. Merlin immediately tells Arthur something remarkable, something that Arthur, unfortunately, we will see in the future, does not take to heart. The scabbard of this sword, it's 10 times more worthy than or more value than the sword itself. Why? Well, because while Arthur wore it, he would lose very little blood from any wound. The sword could win battles, but the scabbard would preserve his life as king. It was protection that was powerful and most valued. Sadly, Arthur would eventually ignore this, and we shall talk about this in a future episode. The sword and the stone made him the king, but this sword, Excalibur, became the outward symbol of kingship that God had already granted him. The blade was justice, authority, and a sacred responsibility placed upon Arthur's shoulder. Yet there's another lesson hidden in this story. Arthur accepted a bargain without knowing its full cost. He trusted Merlin, but the promises you make will eventually come back to bite you. This promise that Arthur made to the Lady of the Lake will eventually catch back up with him, as he will have to respond to a request from her, putting in peril many of his knights and setting off a chain reaction that would eventually lead to the great tragic story of Sir Balin, which we will look at in a future episode, but also would set off the creation and the first instance of the Dolorous Strike, making the Holy Grail one of the greatest and most important MacGuffins or things that we search for in Arthurian legend. Until then, let's keep the fire burning. If you like this video and would like more, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you haven't done so already, and tell me which one of the great stories from Le Morte d'Arthur and King Arthur would you like to listen to or hear about next. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here with you. Have a nice night. Keep the fire burning.